The year was 1918. The world was at war. The United States had entered the Great War only the year before, and across the oceans, American ships carried troops, coal, steel, and fuel to keep the armies of Europe alive. Among them was a steel giant unlike anything else in the U.S. Navy, the USS Cyclops. She stretched more than 540 feet from bow to stern, the largest collier ever built for the Navy, a vessel designed to carry the lifeblood of modern war: coal to power ships, manganese ore to harden steel, weapons to fight battles across the ocean. She was not glamorous, not armed with great guns, but she was vital. Her cavernous holds could swallow more than 10,000 tons of cargo, and her silhouette towered above docks wherever she went. In early March 1918, she sailed from Barbados bound for Baltimore. On board were more than 300 sailors, officers, and passengers, along with a heavy load of manganese ore. The weather was calm, the seas fair, and yet she never arrived. No distress call, no wreckage, no lifeboat. She was gone. The largest non-combat loss of life in U.S. naval history. To this day, the fate of the Cyclops remains one of the ocean's greatest mysteries, a silence that has lasted more than a century. When the Cyclops was launched in 1910, at the William Cramp and Sons shipyard in Philadelphia, she represented American ambition. The Navy was still powered by coal, and colliers were the lifeline of fleets. But Cyclops was different. She was immense, 542 feet long, and nearly 65 feet across her beam. Her engines were built for endurance, not speed, but she could carry over 12,000 tons of cargo across the Atlantic without pause. To allies, her arrival in port was a symbol of strength. To enemies, it was a reminder that America's industrial might could not be ignored. Life aboard her was harsh. Coal dust coated everything. Sailors shoveled endlessly into her boilers, feeding the great engines. The work was hot, choking, and unrelenting. There was no glamour in serving aboard a collier, only labor and duty. Yet the men knew their work mattered. Without ships like Cyclops, there would be no steel for weapons, no coal for battleships, no supplies for soldiers. For 8 years she performed her duty, reliable, dependable, steady. But some sailors noticed her flaws. She rolled heavily in rough seas, and her vast holds made her slow to turn. Still, she endured. And in 1917, as America entered the war, she was pressed into non-stop service, carrying ore and coal between ports in South America and the United States. By 1918, she was tasked with a mission that would become her last: to haul manganese ore from Brazil to Baltimore, ore so dense and heavy that her decks creaked with the weight. A routine mission that would become legend. On February 16, 1918, Cyclops departed Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with more than 10,000 tons of manganese ore. Her captain was Lieutenant Commander George Worley, a man as mysterious as the voyage itself, born in Germany before becoming an American citizen. Worley was strict, volatile, and often feared. Crewmen whispered of his strange behavior, of him pacing the decks in his long underwear, pistol at his side, berating sailors for the smallest offense. Some respected his discipline, others thought him unfit, but the Navy had given him command of its largest collier. From Rio, the ship sailed to Salvador, then on to Barbados. Their Cyclops took on more coal before beginning the last leg to Baltimore. Her captain refused requests to lighten her heavy cargo. Despite warnings, she rode too low in the water. On March 4th, she left Barbados with 306 souls aboard. The seas were calm, the skies clear, and then she vanished. No distress call ever reached the Navy. No lifeboat ever appeared on shore. No debris drifted across the waves. It was as if the ocean had opened its arms and pulled her beneath forever. Weeks passed. Families waited on docks, scanning horizons that never delivered their loved ones home. The Navy searched that found nothing. A ship longer than 2 city blocks gone without a trace. When a ship disappears without a signal or scrap of wreckage, imagination fills the silence. The simplest theory is the sea itself. Storms in the Caribbean and Atlantic can rise suddenly. Walls of water appearing without warning. Cyclops, heavy with manganese, might have been unable to withstand the blow of a rogue wave. One strike could have capsized her in seconds, giving no chance to signal for help. But storms leave traces. Oil slicks, wreckage, lifeboats, nothing was ever found. Another theory is structural failure. The ship had suffered engine trouble before her last voyage, and records suggest she sailed with only one working engine. Loaded with more than 10,000 tons of dense ore, her hull may have buckled. Cargo like manganese can shift and liquefy inside the holds, turning solid rock into a deadly wave of weight. If her spine cracked, she could have gone down in minutes. Others point to sabotage. Captain Worley's German origins made him a target of suspicion. Some believed he was a traitor steering Cyclops into enemy hands or scuttling her deliberately. But no German records support this. No submarine ever claimed the kill. And then there is the legend. Cyclops vanished in waters later, called the Bermuda Triangle, a region sailors whispered about long before its name was coined. Here compasses spun wildly, storms appeared from nowhere, and ships vanished as though swallowed by unseen forces. The Cyclops became the triangle's crown jewel, its greatest enigma. In truth, no theory has ever been proven. Storm, failure, sabotage, or supernatural. All that remains is silence. By late March, the Navy admitted what families feared. Cyclops had been lost without a trace. 306 names gone. The scale was staggering. The largest loss of life in U.S. naval history outside of combat. For the family's grief was sharpened by uncertainty. No bodies to bury. No graves to visit. Mothers clutched photographs. Children left lamps burning in windows, hoping fathers might still return. Some widows struggled even to receive pensions without proof of death. Newspapers filled their pages with names. Churches held vigils. Bells tolled in port cities. Across the country, prayers were whispered into silence. Rumors spread. Some said she had been sunk by a German raider. Others that her captain had betrayed her. Others still whispered that the sea itself had taken her as payment. For America, already reeling from the losses of war, the mystery of Cyclops deepened the wound. A reminder that even far from battlefields, death could strike without warning. For those left behind, the loss was not a legend but a lifelong absence. Empty chairs at tables, birthdays never celebrated, voices never heard again. The true weight of the Cyclops was not her steel but the lives she carried. As years passed, the raw pain of loss began to turn into something else. A story retold again and again until it grew larger than history. The Cyclops was no longer just a ship that vanished, she was a ghost. A symbol of mystery and silence. In the 1920s, magazines hinted at betrayal and sabotage. They painted Captain Worley as a villain in league with the Kaiser. Stories of mutiny and espionage colored the tale, though none were proven. By mid-century, the Cyclops was reborn again, this time as the heart of a growing legend called the Bermuda Triangle. Writers pointed to her disappearance as proof that something supernatural stalked those waters. That a ship of such size could vanish without wreckage seemed impossible. So imagination filled the void. Some said she had been pulled into another dimension. Others that Atlantis itself had claimed her. Theories of aliens, time warps, and curses wrapped around her story, until she sailed not in history but in folklore. The Cyclops became a favorite of pulp novels, documentaries, and late-night radio. To historians, she was a tragedy. To the public, she was a ghost ship forever sailing just beyond the horizon. By the 1960s, the legend of the Bermuda Triangle had seized the American imagination. Television specials, books, and headlines told of ships and planes swallowed without a trace. At the center was always the Cyclops. Her size made her disappearance impossible to ignore. She was the proof that fed the fire. If a Navy colossus could vanish, what chance did anyone else have? Explanations piled higher than waves. Storms, rogue waves, magnetic anomalies, alien abductions. The Cyclops became the perfect vessel for mystery, and America embraced her story. Because in an age of rockets to the moon and submarines to the ocean floor, it was comforting and terrifying to believe there were still places on Earth that could not be explained. The Cyclops embodied that tension, a symbol of America's industrial power and also of its fragility before nature's might. Even today, her name is spoken whenever the Bermuda Triangle is mentioned, not just as a lost ship, but as the legend that defines the mystery itself. More than a century has passed since Cyclops disappeared. Searchers have scoured the ocean floor. Sonar robots and divers have mapped trenches and ridges, but nothing has ever been found. Not a beam, not a rivet, not a lifeboat. Historians still debate theories. Structural weakness, storms, sabotage, human error. Each plausible yet none proven. Some point to rogue waves, walls of water taller than buildings rising without warning. Others to cargo liquefaction, shifting or crushing her from within. Some to sabotage during wartime, and others still cling to the legend of the triangle. The truth is silence. The sea has not given up her secret. For the Navy Cyclops remains a line on a memorial plaque, her name carved among the lost. For families, her absence became a shadow passed down through generations. And for America, she is a paradox. A ship of steel remembered not for her service, but for her disappearance. Because in her silence she speaks more loudly than any battle ever could. The USS Cyclops was built to endure, to carry the weight of war across the seas. But in March 1918, she carried something heavier, the weight of mystery. She never returned, and so she lives on. In the tears of families who never saw loved ones again. In the myths of the Bermuda Triangle. In the pages of history where her absence is more powerful than her presence. 306 lives lost without a trace. The sea does not give up her secrets easily. Perhaps one day her bones will be found on the ocean floor, or perhaps she will remain where she has been for more than a century. A ghost in the deep. A silence on the sea. A reminder that even in an age of steel and engines, humanity is small before the vastness of the ocean. The Cyclops sails on, not in stall but in story. Not across the waves but through memory. Her name echoes in every telling. The ship that vanished without a trace.